Twins. The closest thing humans have to a built-in advantage. Scientists studied twins raised completely apart. Different families, different countries, no contact. Same humor, same fears, same careers. One pair both became firefighters. Another both named their dogs the exact same name. Without ever speaking. That is not coincidence. That is something running deeper than environment, deeper than parenting, deeper than choice. But the real advantage is not just genetics. It's how early you stopped being an individual and started being part of a system. For most of human history, being alone was dangerous. Predators didn't chase groups, they waited, and picked off whoever separated from the group. Twins never had to learn that. From day one, there was always someone there, matching your pace, your reactions, your presence. So you develop something rare, non-verbal awareness. Up to 40% of twins create their own language as toddlers. Not taught, built. It fades over time, but the ability behind it doesn't. You pick up shifts in tone faster, micro-expressions, small changes most people miss. You also grow up in constant comparison. Same environment, same age, different outcomes. So you learn what works. That builds adaptability, but also pressure, because identity is never just yours. It's always in relation to someone else. You might be the quieter one, the louder one, the responsible one, the unpredictable one. Roles form early and they stick. The advantage of being a twin is connection. The cost is separation. Because at some point, you have to answer a question most people never face. Who am I without my mirror? Firstborn. You weren't just raised, you were trained early. 23 of the first 29 astronauts NASA sent to space were firstborns or only children. That pattern shows up everywhere. CEOs, presidents, people trusted with high-stakes decisions. That's not personality, that's conditioning. For most of human history, when adults left, someone had to keep things together, and more often than not, it was the oldest child. No training, no choice. You were just the first one there, old enough for responsibility before you were ready. So you became the careful one, the one who notices problems early, the one who steps in before things go wrong. You learn to think ahead, to prepare, to anticipate, to fix things quietly. And people rely on that. Then a sibling arrives, and your role shifts. You go from being the focus to being the example. You start explaining things. Why becomes something you have to answer, not avoid. So you get good at being right, or at least trying to be. That's why firstborns over-prepare, overthink, double-check, because being wrong was never an option. It affected more than just you, but that identity comes with pressure. You learn to perform before you learn to rest, to handle things before asking for help, to carry more than was yours. That builds capability. It also builds control. The belief that if you don't handle it, no one will. The advantage is reliability. The cost is pressure. Because most people spend years trying to become dependable. You were expected to be from the start. Only child. Everything landed on you. Here's the stereotype. Spoiled, selfish, doesn't know how to share. But the research actually shows that almost none of that holds up. Only children match or outperform firstborns academically. They develop larger vocabularies earlier. They score higher in ambition. That's not personality, that's concentration. For most of human history, putting all resources into one child created the strongest outcome. More time, more attention, more correction. Nothing gets diluted. Every conversation is with an adult. Every mistake is noticed. Every strength is reinforced. So you develop differently. You become comfortable in adult environments early. You learn how to think before speaking, how to structure your thoughts. Your inner world becomes strong. You don't need noise to stay occupied. You can sit alone and build something. That shows up later in deep work, writing, research, long-term creation. Because being alone doesn't drain you, it restores you. But the same environment builds pressure. When everything is focused on one person, so is expectation. You learn to self-monitor, self-correct, push yourself without being asked. That creates drive, but also a voice that doesn't turn off. You also miss early conflict training. Siblings teach negotiation. You learned it later through real consequences. The advantage is independence. The cost is intensity. Because when everything is pointed at you, there's nowhere to hide. Middle child. The one people underestimate. Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Martin Luther King Jr. All middle children. Because being overlooked wasn't the disadvantage, it was the training. In early human groups, survival depended on stability. Someone had to keep people aligned. Not the leader, not the strongest. The one who understood both sides. The coalition keeper. You learned how to read the room. Not just one person, everyone. Who's upset? Who's pulling away? What's about to happen? And because attention wasn't guaranteed, you adapted. You became flexible. Easy to be around. Hard to define. Middle children build strong friendships and wide networks. Because connection wasn't automatic, you had to build it. You also learned influence without authority. You guide instead of control. Suggest instead of demand. You shape the room without needing to own it. You also handle change differently. When things shift, you adjust faster than most. But that flexibility comes with a cost. When you see every side, choosing one becomes harder. Identity takes longer. You can become so adaptable that you lose clarity. The advantage is perspective. The cost is clarity. Because while everyone else is struggling to see both sides, you've been doing it your whole life. Bonus baby. You grew up in a different version of the same family. By the time you arrived, the mistakes had already been made and fixed. Rules softened, reactions became measured. Your siblings already mapped everything out. For most of human history, children weren't raised by just two people. They were raised by groups. Older siblings, multiple caregivers. This increased survival. You didn't have to test everything. You absorbed what already worked. You learn how to navigate people early. You understand dynamics before stepping into them. You also spent years being the youngest in the room. So you learned how to speak without authority. You became comfortable around people ahead of you, less intimidated, more adaptable. But it comes with distance. You're part of the family, but not part of the same timeline. Conversations started before you arrived, memories you don't share, and that creates separation. The advantage is acceleration. The cost is disconnection. Two-child family. No buffer, no hiding. Just you and the one person who, for better or worse, knows exactly how to push you. Everything becomes visible. Who's ahead? Who's behind? Who's getting attention? There's no escaping comparison. The older one feels pressure early because now someone is watching, tracking, measuring. The younger one gets a different advantage, a live example. Someone making mistakes first, testing boundaries, taking the consequences, so you learn faster. You skip entire layers of failure. Both positions sharpen, constantly. You learn how to compete, how to respond, how to win, and how to recover when you don't. That builds resilience in a very specific way because the competition is close, personal, unavoidable. You can't ignore each other, so you improve. But those patterns stay. The older one struggles to let go of control. The younger one struggles to fully take responsibility. Both learned roles early. The advantage is pressure. The cost is comparison. Youngest child. You arrived after the system was understood. Your parents were calmer, less reactive. The rules got shorter. So you grew up with more space, more freedom to test things. In early human groups, someone had to try what others wouldn't. When the old way stopped working, someone had to take the risk. That was often the youngest. You had the least to lose. So you experimented. That shows up today. Lastborns are overrepresented in creative fields, comedy, acting, content creation, anywhere that rewards originality. You also learned influence early. You couldn't compete with authority, so you learned something stronger: timing, charm, persuasion, how to make people want to say yes. You learned how to shift energy in a room. That's a powerful skill. You also take risks differently. Less hesitation, more willingness to try. Because failure didn't define you early, but structure wasn't forced on you either, so you have to build it later. Discipline becomes a choice, not something you inherited. You also deal with perception, being underestimated, not taken seriously at first, even when you're capable. The advantage is influence. The cost is discipline. Because while others were learning how to follow rules, you were learning how to bend them. Blended family. You didn't just grow up, you adjusted. Different rules, different expectations. Sometimes in the same week. One environment worked one way, another works differently. So early, context. Who you are shifts depending on where you are. For most of human history, merged, and not everyone automatically belonged. Some had to figure it out, how to fit in, how to read dynamics, how to avoid conflict. That builds adaptability. You learn to scan and trust, who to respond. You adjust faster than most. You also learn that connection isn't automatic, it's built. Through awareness, through effort, through timing. That makes you easy to integrate into new environments, comfortable around different personalities. But it comes with a cost. Because when you've had to adjust this often, it raises a question. Which version of you is real? You can become so adaptable that consistency feels unclear. The advantage is adaptability. The cost is identity. Because while others were figuring out who they were in one system, you were learning how to exist in multiple. For most of human history, your place in a family wasn't just a label. It was a role. Each position solved a real problem. And those patterns are still operating within you now. Every role gave you something, a way of thinking, reacting, moving through the world. And every role came with a cost, a blind spot, a pattern that once made sense, but doesn't always serve you anymore. Most people never think to question it. The ones who do get something different, a choice. Because your birth order shaped you, but it doesn't decide who you become next. Which of these felt the most relatable? Subscribe if you want more like this.